My wife Sarah thinks I'm an idiot. She's been thinking it for months now, maybe years, and honestly, I've been letting her. My name is Jake Mitchell. I'm 39 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years building firewalls that could stop a digital army. But apparently, I can't stop my own wife from treating me like yesterday's software update. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday in our overpriced Seattle suburb. Sarah was in the kitchen, phone glued to her ear, whispering about some wellness retreat she absolutely had to attend. Her voice had that breathless quality it gets when she's lying through her perfect veneered teeth. No, Tessa, he won't suspect anything. Jake's too busy with his little computer games to notice what I'm doing. Little computer games. Right. Those little computer games pay for her yoga classes, her organic smoothies, and her collection of crystals that supposedly align her chakras. I stayed hidden behind the morning paper, listening to her plan what was obviously not a wellness retreat. The flight to Miami leaves Thursday. Tell Derek I'll meet him at the hotel. Derek. Not the wellness retreat guru she'd mentioned last week. Derek Morrison, her old college boyfriend who'd been sliding into her DMs for months. I know because I've been monitoring our home network traffic like any good cybersecurity expert would. Call it professional paranoia, but when your wife starts acting like she's running a covert operation, you start treating her like a potential security breach. Sarah hung up and turned to me with that smile she reserves for when she wants something expensive. Honey, I need to borrow your credit card, the one with the high limit. My card is maxed out from the grocery shopping. Grocery shopping. Last week's grocery shopping apparently cost $3,000 and happened entirely at Nordstrom, according to the statements I'd already reviewed. But I handed over the card anyway, because Jake Mitchell, cybersecurity expert and apparently world-class sucker, always gives his wife what she wants. Sure, babe. What's the retreat costing these days? Oh, you know how these spiritual journeys are. You can't put a price on inner peace. Apparently, you can put a price on it. $50,000 to be exact. That's how much I'd loaded onto that particular card the night before, after setting up the most sophisticated tracking system I'd ever built. Every swipe, every transaction, every location would be logged, recorded, and traced back to a server farm that Sarah couldn't find if I drew her a map. She kissed my forehead like I was a golden retriever who'd just learned to sit, and I watched her walk away in her designer athleisure wear that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Sarah Mitchell, wellness influencer to 12,000 followers who hung on her every word about finding balance and authentic living. The irony was so thick you could serve it at one of her overpriced meditation workshops. My phone buzzed. Owen, my best friend since college and the only ex-cop I know who's more cynical than I am. Coffee? I've got news about your wife's new boyfriend. Owen had been doing some digging of his own. Turns out Derek Morrison wasn't just Sarah's college flame. He was a professional con artist with a specialty in targeting lonely housewives with rich husbands. He'd pulled this same routine in Portland, Denver, and Phoenix. Always the same pattern. Slide into their social media, play the sensitive ex-boyfriend, convince them to fund his business opportunities with their husband's money. But Derek had made one crucial mistake. He'd targeted the wife of someone who could trace a digital footprint through 7 proxy servers in 3 different countries before breakfast. I met Owen at our usual spot, a coffee shop that served actual coffee instead of the liquid meditation Sarah preferred. He slid a manila folder across the table with the satisfied expression of a man who'd just solved a particularly satisfying puzzle. Your wife's boyfriend has quite the resume. 3 wives, 5 girlfriends, and approximately $200,000 in other people's money. All perfectly legal, of course. Just good old-fashioned emotional manipulation. The folder contained everything. Derek's real name, his previous addresses, photos of him with other women in identical poses to the ones I'd seen on Sarah's hidden Instagram account, the one she thought I didn't know about. How long have you known? Owen asked, studying my face. About Derek? 2 months. About Sarah being a lying, cheating, materialistic narcissist who thinks I'm too stupid to notice? Probably 2 years. Owen laughed, the bitter sound echoing off the coffee shop's exposed brick walls. So, what's the plan? Divorce lawyer? Private investigator? Or are we going with the classic change the locks and throw her stuff on the lawn approach? I pulled out my phone and showed him the tracking app I'd built. Sarah's location showed up as a red dot, currently at the mall, spending my money on whatever she thought she'd need for her romantic getaway with Derek. I'm going to let her hang herself with her own rope. Digital rope. The kind that leaves a permanent record. The beauty of my plan was its simplicity. Sarah thought she was smarter than me, thought she could manipulate the boring tech husband who spent too much time staring at computer screens. She had no idea that those computer screens had taught me everything I needed to know about human behavior, digital forensics, and the art of patient revenge. My phone chimed with a transaction alert. Sarah had just spent $800 at Victoria's Secret. Apparently, inner peace required very expensive lingerie. She's making this too easy, I told Owen, showing him the alert. Maybe that's the point. Maybe she wants to get caught. I'd considered that possibility. Sarah had been increasingly careless, increasingly obvious. But I didn't think she wanted to get caught. I thought she wanted to leave, wanted to run off with Derek and his promises of adventure and passion. She just wanted to fund their escape with my money first. The next alert came 20 minutes later. $1,200 at a high-end luggage store. Then another one. $2,000 at a jewelry store that specialized in travel-friendly luxury pieces. By the time Sarah came home that evening, she'd spent nearly $15,000 of the $50,000 I'd loaded onto the card. She walked through the door carrying enough shopping bags to stock a small boutique, her face glowing with the satisfaction of a successful hunting expedition. "How was the wellness retreat planning?" I asked from the couch, not looking up from my laptop. "Oh, very intensive. I had to get some special items for the meditation practices." Special items. Right. I was pretty sure meditation didn't require La Perla underwear and a Louis Vuitton suitcase, but what did I know? I was just the guy paying for it all. That night, while Sarah took one of her marathon bubble baths, I put the finishing touches on phase 2 of my plan. If she wanted to play games with my money, I'd show her what a real game looked like. The kind where I controlled all the rules, knew all the moves, and held all the cards. Sarah had no idea she was about to become the star of the most educational wellness retreat of her life. Thursday morning arrived with Sarah bouncing around the house like a teenager getting ready for prom. She'd packed and repacked her new luggage 3 times, each outfit carefully chosen to project the image of a woman on a spiritual journey. If spiritual journeys required 5 bikinis and enough makeup to stock a department store counter. "I'll miss you so much, honey," she said, giving me another one of those patronizing kisses. "Try not to work too hard while I'm gone. Maybe order some pizza, watch some sports, do those man things you enjoy." Man things. Like I was some kind of domesticated caveman who couldn't function without her guidance. I nodded and smiled, playing the part of the clueless husband she needed me to be. "How long did you say this retreat was?" "Just a week. Maybe 10 days if I really connect with the program. You understand, right? Sometimes spiritual growth can't be rushed." Spiritual growth. I watched her drag her designer luggage to the Uber, wondering if Derek had fed her these lines, or if she'd come up with them herself. Either way, she delivered them with the conviction of someone who'd started believing her own lies. The Uber pulled away, and I waited exactly 30 seconds before opening my laptop. The tracking software showed Sarah's phone moving toward SeaTac Airport right on schedule. Her flight to Miami left in 3 hours, which gave me plenty of time to implement phase 2. I called my lawyer, Priya Patel, a woman who could dissect a prenuptial agreement like a forensic pathologist examining evidence. "Jake, please tell me you're not calling to discuss another one of Sarah's shopping sprees." "Actually, I'm calling to discuss all of them. How quickly can you freeze our joint accounts?" There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "Are we talking about a separation? Because if we are, I need to warn you that Washington is a community property state. We're talking about protecting marital assets from fraudulent use. My wife is currently on her way to Miami to spend a week with her boyfriend, using money she stole from a credit card she obtained under false pretenses." "Jake!" Priya's voice took on the tone she used when explaining complex legal concepts to particularly dense clients. "You gave her the card. That's not theft. I gave her a card she requested for grocery shopping. She's using it to fund a romantic vacation with another man. In most states, that's called dissipation of marital assets." Another pause, longer this time. "How much are we talking about?" "So far, about $28,000, but the week is young." Priya made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. "I can file for a temporary restraining order on the joint accounts by this afternoon. But Jake, you need to be very careful here. If this looks like entrapment or manipulation, it could backfire in divorce proceedings." "Don't worry about entrapment. I'm just giving my wife exactly what she asked for, the rope she needs to hang herself with." After hanging up with Priya, I opened the real-time tracking dashboard I'd built. Sarah's phone showed her at the airport, right at the gate for the Miami flight. But the beautiful thing about modern technology is that it doesn't just track location. It tracks everything. Every photo she took, every social media post, every credit card transaction, it all flowed through the network monitoring system I'd installed on our home router months ago. Sarah thought she was being clever by using her phone's mobile data, but she had no idea that her phone automatically connected to our home network every time she was in range. And once I had access to her device, I had access to everything. The first transaction alert came in while her plane was still taxiing to the runway. Somehow, she'd managed to spend $300 at the airport gift shop. Probably champagne for the flight because nothing says spiritual retreat like getting drunk at 30,000 feet. I settled in to watch the show. The Miami transaction started as soon as her plane landed. First, a $100 Uber ride to South Beach. Then $800 at a restaurant that definitely didn't serve the kind of organic, locally sourced food she insisted on at home. By evening, she'd dropped $2,000 at a hotel bar and another $1,500 at a club that specialized in bottle service and the kind of music that made my teeth ache. But the real entertainment came from her social media activity. Sarah had been posting to her wellness Instagram account all day, sharing photos of herself in meditation poses on the beach, talking about connecting with the universe and finding her authentic self. What she didn't know was that my monitoring software was capturing the metadata from every photo, including the exact location where each one was taken. Her meditation poses were being photographed in the bathroom of a 5-star hotel. Her sunrise yoga session happened at 2 p.m. in the hotel's parking garage. And her healthy smoothie from a local organic cafe was actually a frozen margarita from the hotel pool bar. But the best part came that evening, when she posted a long, heartfelt message about the importance of honesty in relationships and the courage it takes to live an authentic life. She posted it from Derek's hotel room while wearing the Victoria's Secret lingerie she'd bought with my credit card. I screenshot everything. Owen came over around 9, carrying a 6-pack of beer and the satisfied expression of a man who'd spent the day watching someone else's life implode in real time. "Please tell me you've been monitoring this disaster all day." I turned my laptop around to show him the transaction log. In less than 12 hours, Sarah had spent over $18,000. Hotels, restaurants, shopping, spa treatments, and something called Couples Parasailing Adventure that cost $800. Couples Parasailing, Owen read aloud. I thought this was a solo spiritual retreat. Apparently, the universe works in mysterious ways. We spent the evening watching Sarah's digital footprints accumulate like evidence in a criminal case. Every transaction was logged, every location recorded, every social media post preserved for posterity. By the time we called it a night, she'd spent nearly $30,000 and created enough evidence to support a fraud case if I'd been inclined to press charges. But I wasn't interested in sending Sarah to jail. I was interested in something much more satisfying. Public humiliation on a scale that would make her infamous in our social circle for years to come. Friday brought a new level of creative spending. Sarah discovered Miami's high-end shopping district and apparently decided that spiritual enlightenment required a complete wardrobe overhaul. $3,000 at Gucci, $4,000 at Prada, $1,500 at some boutique that specialized in resort wear for the conscious woman. She also discovered Derek's expensive taste in entertainment. Dinner at a restaurant that charged $200 per person just for the privilege of sitting down. A private yacht charter that cost more than most people's cars. VIP tickets to some club that apparently required a $1,000 minimum just to get through the door. But the real masterpiece came Saturday morning, when Sarah posted a video blog from the hotel balcony talking about how the retreat was helping her understand the difference between wants and needs, between material possessions and spiritual wealth. She was wearing a $5,000 dress while she said it, holding a glass of champagne that probably cost more than most people's grocery budget. I saved that video to 3 different servers. By Sunday, Sarah had blown through $47,000 of the $50,000 I'd loaded onto the card. She was spending money faster than a lottery winner with a gambling problem and apparently having the time of her life doing it. That's when I decided it was time to let her know that the party was over. I waited until Sunday evening when the transaction log showed her at another expensive restaurant, probably celebrating the success of her spiritual journey. Then, I sent a single text message to her phone. "Having fun in Miami? The photos are great, especially the ones Derek doesn't know you're taking. See you when you get home. We need to talk." The response came back in less than 30 seconds. What photos? What are you talking about? I sent her a screenshot of her own Instagram post, the one where she was supposedly meditating on the beach, but was actually in Derek's hotel room. The metadata was clearly visible, showing the exact location, time, and even the device she'd used to take it. Her next message took 5 minutes to arrive. We can explain everything. We, not I. We. As if she and Derek were a team now, partners in whatever story they thought would get them out of this mess. I didn't respond. I just watched the transaction alerts continue to come in, each one adding to the mountain of evidence I was building. Sarah was digging her own grave with my credit card, one expensive shovelful at a time. Monday morning brought the final transaction, a $3,000 shopping spree at the airport, probably buying gifts for Derek or souvenirs to support her cover story. The card finally hit its limit at $49,837. Sarah's flight landed at SeaTac at 2:47 p.m. I was waiting in the parking garage with a folder full of printed transaction records, screenshots of her social media posts, and a smile that probably looked more carnivory than welcoming. She walked out of the terminal looking like a woman who'd spent a week being pampered at an expensive spa, which wasn't far from the truth. Her skin had that golden tan that only comes from lying by a pool with a cocktail in your hand, and she was wearing clothes I'd never seen before but had definitely paid for. Jake? She rushed over and threw her arms around me like we were starring in some romantic movie. I missed you so much. The retreat was incredible, so transformative. I feel like a completely new person. I bet you do, I said, handing her the folder. We need to talk. Sarah's face went through more color changes than a Windows screensaver as she flipped through the folder, transaction records, location data, social media screenshots, even a few photos I'd pulled from Derek's public Instagram account, showing the two of them together at various Miami hotspots. We were sitting in our living room, the same room where she'd planned this whole charade just 5 days earlier. Sarah kept looking at the papers like they might spontaneously combust if she stared hard enough. Jake, I can explain all of this. I'm sure you can. You've always been creative with explanations. She set the folder down on the coffee table, her hands shaking just enough to make the papers rustle. The retreat, it wasn't what I expected. Derek was there, yes, but it was just a coincidence, a crazy coincidence. A coincidence that cost $49,000. The expenses got out of hand, I know that, but Miami is expensive, and the retreat center required certain accommodations. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot of Derek's Instagram story from Saturday night. He was holding a bottle of champagne that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment, with Sarah clearly visible in the background wearing that $5,000 dress. Which retreat center was this again? The one that requires crystal champagne for proper meditation? Sarah's face crumpled like a house of cards in an earthquake. The wellness influencer mask slipped away, revealing something desperate and cornered underneath. Okay, fine. Yes, I was with Derek, but it's not what you think. I think you've been planning this for months. I think you've been treating me like an ATM machine while you figured out how to fund your new life with your old boyfriend. I think you've been lying to me, to your followers, and probably to yourself. She stood up and started pacing, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor like a countdown timer. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the constant need to maintain an image, to be perfect for everyone. Do you know how exhausting it is to be Sarah Mitchell, wellness guru, 24 hours a day? More exhausting than being Jake Mitchell, the husband who pays for Sarah Mitchell's lifestyle? That's not fair. Fair? I stood up too, and suddenly our living room felt like a boxing ring. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about fair. You've been lying to me for months, stealing money to fund an affair and posting inspirational content about authenticity while living a completely fake life. But I'm the one being unfair? Sarah stopped pacing and turned to face me. For a moment, I saw something that might have been the woman I'd married 8 years ago. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. I was going to tell you, after the retreat, I was going to come home and we were going to have an honest conversation about our marriage. An honest conversation that started with you stealing $50,000? I didn't steal anything. That's our money from our joint accounts. Money I earned while you played pretend guru on social media. That hit home. Sarah's face flushed red, and her voice took on the sharp edge it got when she felt cornered. Played pretend? I have 12,000 followers who depend on me for guidance and inspiration. I've built a brand, a business, a community of people who believe in what I'm teaching. What you're teaching, you mean the authentic living and honest relationships you were promoting while lying to your husband and cheating with your ex-boyfriend? Derek understands me in ways you never could. He sees the real me, not just the woman who does your laundry and makes your dinner. The real you? The real you spent $49,000 in 5 days on champagne and designer clothes while posting about the dangers of materialism. The real you is a hypocrite, Sarah, a lying, cheating, materialistic hypocrite who's built a career out of selling people the exact opposite of what you actually believe. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire that was just getting started. Sarah stared at me with an expression I'd never seen before, part shock, part rage, part something that might have been fear. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting our assets from fraudulent use. There's a difference. You hacked my phone, you tracked my location, you violated my privacy. I monitored our home network for suspicious activity, which is literally part of my job description. The fact that your phone connects to our Wi-Fi automatically isn't my fault. Sarah grabbed the folder and threw it across the room, sending papers flying like confetti at the world's most depressing party. You're sick, Jake. This is obsessive, controlling behavior. No wonder I needed to find someone who actually respects me. Respects you? Derek Morrison has pulled this exact same scam on at least 3 other women in the past 5 years. He finds lonely housewives with rich husbands, seduces them with promises of adventure and understanding, then convinces them to fund his lifestyle with their husband's money. You're not special, Sarah. You're just the latest mark. That stopped her cold. What are you talking about? I pulled out another folder, this one courtesy of Owen's investigative skills. Photos of Derek with other women, court documents from his previous divorces, financial records showing a pattern of behavior that went back years. Derek Morrison, also known as Derek Matthews, Derek Mason, and Derek Martin, depending on which identity he's using at the time. Age 42, originally from Phoenix, currently wanted by creditors in 3 states. He's a professional con artist, Sarah, and you just funded his operation with our life savings. Sarah sank back onto the couch like someone had cut her strings. She picked up the photos of Derek with other women, studying them with the intensity of a detective examining crime scene evidence. These could be fake, photoshopped. They could be, but they're not. I can show you the metadata, the source files, the original social media posts, or you could just call Derek and ask him. I'm sure he'd be happy to explain his business model. She was quiet for a long time, staring at the photos. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were from sadness, anger, or just the shock of having her fantasy shattered so completely. So what happens now? You divorce me, take everything, leave me with nothing? I haven't decided yet. But Sarah, you need to understand something. This isn't just about the money, or even about Derek. This is about the fact that you looked me in the eye every day for months while you planned this. You kissed me goodbye when you left for the airport, knowing you were going to spend the week with another man. You posted about authenticity and honesty while living a completely fabricated life. I know how it looks. How it looks. Sarah, this is how it is. You're not a victim here. You made choices, deliberate choices, and now you have to live with the consequences. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her carefully applied makeup. What do you want from me? An apology? Groveling? You want me to beg for forgiveness? I want you to be honest. For once in the past year, I want you to tell me the truth about what you want and what you're planning to do. Sarah took a deep breath, and for a moment, I thought she might actually do it. Might actually have that honest conversation she'd claimed to want. Instead, she stood up, smoothed down her dress, and looked at me with an expression that was pure ice. I want a divorce, Jake. I want to split our assets 50-50, and I want to move on with my life, with or without Derek. Fine. But Sarah, there's something you should know. Our friends, your followers, everyone in our social circle is going to find out about this. About Miami, about Derek, about the money. I can't control that information anymore. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. You've created a digital trail that leads directly back to everything you've done. Every transaction, every photo, every social media post, it's all connected, and it's all going to come out during divorce proceedings. Your wellness brand, your reputation, your credibility, it's all going to be collateral damage. Sarah's face went pale, but her voice stayed steady. Then I guess I'll have to rebuild, start over. create something new. She walked toward the stairs, probably planning to pack more bags, maybe planning to call Derek to figure out their next move. But she stopped at the bottom step and turned back to me. You know what the saddest part is, Jake? You're right about everything. Derek, the money, the lying, all of it. But you're also right about something else. I am a completely different person than the woman you married. And that woman, the real me, would rather be broke and honest than rich and trapped in a marriage with someone who sees her as a problem to be solved instead of a person to be loved. She went upstairs, and I heard her moving around in our bedroom, probably packing. I sat in the living room, surrounded by scattered papers and the wreckage of 8 years of marriage, wondering if she was right. Wondering if I'd been so focused on being right that I'd forgotten how to be a husband. But then I thought about the $49,000, the lies, the calculated deception, and I realized that some problems can't be solved with love. Some problems can only be solved with consequences. And Sarah was about to discover just how many consequences I'd been preparing for her. Sarah left the next morning with 2 suitcases and a promise from her lawyer that I'd be hearing from him soon. She also left with something she didn't know about: a complete backup of her social media accounts, her email, and her phone records, all legally obtained through our shared family plan and home network. I waited exactly 24 hours before I started phase 3 of my plan. Not revenge, exactly. More like public education. It started with a simple Facebook post on my personal account. After 8 years of marriage, I've learned that the most important thing in a relationship is honesty. When that breaks down, everything else falls apart pretty quickly. Some expensive lessons are worth sharing. I attached a single photo, Sarah's Instagram post about finding authentic happiness, posted from Derek's hotel room in Miami, with the metadata clearly visible showing the location and timestamp. Within an hour, I had 47 comments and 63 shares. Our friends, neighbors, and Sarah's fellow wellness influencers were suddenly very interested in the story behind the story. My phone rang at 2 p.m. It was Tessa, Sarah's assistant and partner in the Miami deception. Jake, what the hell are you doing? Sarah is freaking out. People are asking questions about her retreat, about the photos, about everything. I'm sharing my experience with social media authenticity. It's very educational. You need to take that post down. Now, before this gets out of hand. I don't think I will. See, Tessa, I've been doing some research into digital marketing and influencer culture. Did you know that the Federal Trade Commission requires social media influencers to disclose when they're being paid to promote products? They also have rules about truthfulness in advertising. There was a long pause. What are you talking about? I'm talking about Sarah's wellness retreat posts, the ones where she promoted specific hotels, restaurants, and experiences while failing to disclose that she was being funded by someone else. That's false advertising, Tessa. And since you helped plan the trip, you're technically an accessory. You're insane. Nobody's going to care about FTC regulations. You're probably right, but they might care about this. I sent her a screenshot of Sarah's expense report from the trip. Every transaction, every location, every purchase, organized into a neat spreadsheet that told the complete story of her spiritual retreat. Where did you get this? I made it. From the credit card records, location data, and social media posts. It's amazing what you can piece together when you have the right tools and the motivation to use them. Tessa hung up without another word. By evening, my Facebook post had been shared over 200 times. Sarah's followers were starting to ask questions in the comments of her retreat posts. Questions about the expensive restaurants, the designer clothes, the mysterious man who appeared in the background of several photos. That's when Sarah called me directly. Jake, you have to stop this. People are starting to figure out what happened. What happened, Sarah? I thought you went on a spiritual retreat. You know what happened, and you know what this is going to do to my career, my reputation, everything I've built. I know what you did to our marriage, our finances, and our trust. Everything else is just consequences. Please, I'm begging you, take down the post, stop sharing information, and let me handle this privately. Like you handled our marriage privately? Like you handled Derek privately? She was crying now. The kind of desperate crying that comes from watching your entire life collapse in real time. I made mistakes, okay? I know I made mistakes, but destroying me publicly isn't going to fix anything. I'm not destroying you, Sarah. I'm just sharing the truth. Isn't that what you're always telling your followers to do? Live authentically, be honest about their struggles? That's different, and you know it. How is it different? She couldn't answer that question, so she hung up. The next day brought a new development. Someone had created a Twitter thread connecting all of Sarah's Miami posts, showing the timeline of her retreat alongside the transaction records I'd shared. The thread went viral, attracting attention from other wellness influencers, lifestyle bloggers, and eventually some legitimate journalists who were interested in the story of influencer fraud. My phone started ringing constantly. Reporters, bloggers, people wanting to interview me about digital infidelity and social media authenticity. I ignored most of them, but I did accept one interview request from a technology podcast that focused on cybersecurity and digital privacy. The host was a woman named Jennifer Chen, who specialized in stories about how technology impacts relationships. Jake, can you walk us through how you discovered your wife's deception? It wasn't really deception detection as much as basic network security. When someone on your home network starts exhibiting unusual digital behavior, you investigate. That's just good cybersecurity practice. But you went beyond just monitoring network traffic, didn't you? You tracked her location, monitored her social media, even analyzed the metadata from her photos. I used publicly available tools to analyze publicly available information. Everything Sarah posted was visible to her followers and to anyone with basic digital literacy skills. I just organized it in a way that told the complete story. And what story did it tell? It told the story of someone who built a career teaching people to live authentically while living a completely inauthentic life herself. The technology didn't create the problem, it just made the problem visible. The podcast episode was downloaded over 50,000 times in the first week. Sarah's story became a case study in influencer fraud, digital infidelity, and the gap between social media personas and reality. But the real impact came from Sarah's own followers. They started digging through her old posts, looking for other inconsistencies, other signs that her wellness brand was built on lies. They found plenty: posts about financial minimalism while wearing thousands of dollars in designer clothes, advice about relationship authenticity while secretly planning an affair, recommendations for budget-friendly wellness practices while spending more on a single meal than most people spend on groceries in a month. Her follower count started dropping. First hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. Brands that had sponsored her content started distancing themselves. The Wellness Retreat Center, where she taught monthly workshops, canceled her contract. Within 2 weeks, Sarah Mitchell, the wellness influencer, had become Sarah Mitchell, the cautionary tale. I felt bad about it sometimes. Usually late at night when I was lying in our empty house, wondering if there had been another way to handle things. But then I'd remember the $49,000, the months of lies, the calculated ways she'd manipulated me while planning her escape. Sarah had built her brand on teaching people to live with integrity and authenticity. In the end, I just helped her followers learn what those concepts actually looked like in practice. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday, delivered by a courier who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Sarah was asking for half of everything, plus alimony, plus a non-disclosure agreement that would prevent me from sharing any more information about our marriage. I called Priya immediately. She wants a gag order? A comprehensive non-disclosure agreement covering all aspects of their relationship, including financial records, personal communications, and social media activity. After she spent $50,000 on an affair and built her career on giving relationship advice, apparently she feels that your social media posts have damaged her earning potential and violated her privacy rights. I laughed, the kind of bitter laugh that comes from recognizing the perfect irony of a situation. Her privacy rights? She posted everything herself. I just organized it. I know, and Jake, I have to tell you, this NDA request is probably the best thing that could have happened to us. It's essentially an admission that everything you've shared is true and damaging. No innocent person asks for a gag order. So, what do? We counteroffer. No alimony. Assets split based on contribution rather than community property laws, and absolutely no NDA. If Sarah wants a divorce, she gets a divorce. But she doesn't get to rewrite history or silence the consequences of her choices. The counteroffer went back to Sarah's lawyer the next day. His response came back within hours. They wanted to negotiate. That's when I knew I had won. Not the marriage that had been over long before Miami, but the war that started when Sarah decided to treat me like a fool who would never figure out what she was doing. She'd underestimated the boring tech husband who spent too much time staring at computer screens. Those screens had taught me everything I needed to know about patience, planning, and the art of letting people destroy themselves with their own choices. Sarah had wanted to live authentically. I'd just helped her discover what authentic consequences looked like. The divorce mediation took place in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. Sarah sat across from me with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Robert Chen, who specialized in high-conflict divorces and damage control. Sarah looked different, smaller somehow, like the public humiliation had physically diminished her. Her wellness influencer glow had been replaced by the pallor of someone who'd been spending too much time indoors, probably hiding from the ongoing social media storm. My client is prepared to make a reasonable settlement offer, Chen began, sliding a folder across the table. In exchange for a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement and the removal of all social media content related to their marriage. Priya opened the folder and raised an eyebrow. Your client wants 60% of marital assets, 3 years of alimony, and a gag order that would prevent Mr. Mitchell from discussing anything that happened during their marriage. In exchange for what, exactly? In exchange for not pursuing maltreatment charges related to the social media campaign your client has been conducting. I almost laughed. Maltreatment charges? For sharing publicly available information that your client posted herself? The systematic campaign of humiliation and reputation destruction that you've orchestrated goes well beyond sharing information, Mr. Mitchell. You've weaponized social media to destroy my client's career and personal life. I shared the truth about what happened during our marriage. If that destroyed your client's career, maybe her career was built on lies. Sarah spoke for the first time since we'd sat down. Jake, please. I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible decisions. But this has gone far enough. I've lost everything. My followers, my sponsors, my income, my reputation. Isn't that enough? You lost those things because people found out who you really are, Sarah. Not because I forced you to lie to them for years. I made mistakes, I admit that, but I don't deserve to have my entire life destroyed because of them. Priya leaned forward. Mrs. Mitchell, you spent nearly $50,000 of marital funds on an extramarital affair while building a career teaching people about authentic relationships. The public response to that information isn't maltreatment, it's accountability. Chen tried a different approach. Let's talk about the financial reality here. My client's earning potential has been severely damaged by this social media campaign. She may never recover her previous income level. That represents hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost earnings. Lost earnings from a career built on deception, I said. That's like a con artist claiming lost wages after getting arrested. My client was not a con artist. She was a wellness professional who made personal mistakes that have been blown out of proportion. She was a fraud who got caught. The mediation went downhill from there. Sarah's lawyer tried every angle he could think of: privacy violations, emotional distress, even a creative argument about copyright infringement related to the photos I'd shared. But every argument came back to the same basic problem. Everything I'd shared was true, and most of it had been posted publicly by Sarah herself. After 3 hours of legal posturing, we broke for lunch. Sarah asked to speak with me privately, and against Priya's advice, I agreed. We walked to a small park across from the mediation center. Sarah sat on a bench and stared at the ground for a long time before speaking. Do you remember when we first met? At that conference in Portland? I remember. You were giving a presentation about network security, and I was there covering the event for that lifestyle blog I used to write for. You made cybersecurity sound like poetry, like you were describing the hidden architecture of the digital world. Sarah. I fell in love with your mind first, the way you could see patterns and connections that nobody else noticed, the way you could solve problems that seemed impossible to everyone else. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married 8 years ago, before the influencer career, before the designer clothes and the wellness retreats and the constant need for social media validation. I never meant for it to go this far. The lying, the spending, Derek. It started small, just little compromises, little justifications, and then it became this whole other life that I couldn't figure out how to escape from. You could have talked to me. We could have worked through it. Could we? Really? When was the last time we had a conversation about anything other than logistics? When was the last time you looked at me like I was someone you actually wanted to be with, instead of just someone you were obligated to live with? That hit harder than I expected, because she wasn't entirely wrong. Our marriage had been running on autopilot for years, both of us going through the motions without really connecting. That doesn't justify what you did, Sarah. I know. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm trying to explain it. And I'm trying to ask you, as someone who used to love me, to please let this end here. Don't drag it out any longer than it already has been. What are you asking for? Split everything 50-50, no alimony, no NDA, but also no more social media posts, no more interviews, no more public humiliation. Let me try to rebuild my life without having to constantly relive the worst mistakes I've ever made. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or deception, but all I saw was exhaustion and genuine regret. What about Derek? Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. Derek disappeared as soon as the story went viral. Turns out he wasn't interested in dating someone who couldn't fund his lifestyle anymore. Funny how that works. I'm sorry. No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. You were right about him, about everything. I was just too proud and too stupid to see it. We sat in silence for a while, watching people walk their dogs and push strollers through the park. Normal people living normal lives, without the complications of social media drama and public divorce proceedings. Okay, I said finally. 50-50 split, no alimony, no NDA. But Sarah, I can't control what other people do with the information that's already out there. The story has taken on a life of its own. I understand. I just need to know that it's not going to keep coming from you. It won't. We shook hands like business partners closing a deal, which I suppose we were. The business of ending a marriage that had been over long before either of us was ready to admit it. The final divorce decree was signed 2 weeks later. Sarah got half the house equity, half the retirement accounts, and half the savings that remained after her Miami adventure. I got the house, the cars, and the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. Sarah moved to Portland, where she got a job managing social media for a small nonprofit. She deleted all her wellness influencer accounts and started over with a private Instagram account under her maiden name. According to Owen, who kept tabs on these things, she seemed to be living quietly and staying out of the public eye. Derek Morrison was arrested 3 months later in Las Vegas, trying to run the same scam on a casino executive's wife. Apparently, he'd underestimated his target's husband, just like he'd underestimated me. Some people never learn. I kept the house, kept my job, and kept the respect of everyone who'd watched the whole saga unfold. But more importantly, I kept the knowledge that when someone tried to make a fool of me, I'd turn the tables completely. Sarah had built her career teaching people about authentic living and honest relationships. In the end, I'd given her the most authentic experience of her life, real consequences for real choices. 6 months after the divorce was final, I was cleaning out the garage when I found a box of Sarah's old things that had been forgotten in the chaos of her moving out. Photos from our early years together, love letters from when we were dating, a journal she'd kept during our honeymoon. I almost threw it all away, but something made me flip through the journal instead. The entries were full of hope and excitement about our future together, plans for the life we were going to build, dreams about growing old together. Reading it, I felt something I hadn't expected. Sadness. Not for the marriage that had ended, but for the people we'd been when we wrote and received those letters. Young people who'd believed that love was enough to overcome any obstacle, who'd never imagined that they could grow so far apart that they'd become strangers living in the same house. I packed the box carefully and shipped it to Sarah's new address in Portland with a note that said simply, "Thought you might want these. Take care of yourself." She never responded, and I didn't expect her to. But I hoped that somewhere in her new life, she was learning to be the authentic person she'd always claimed to be. As for me, I learned something too. I learned that being right isn't the same thing as being happy, and that winning a war doesn't always feel like victory. But I also learned that some battles are worth fighting even when the cost is higher than you expected. Some principles are worth defending, even when defending them means losing everything else. Sarah had taught me about authentic living after all, just not in the way she'd intended.